Hey, what's up? Welcome to Unpacking the Music, where I get to sit down with a producer or an artist and really hash it out, really talk through what the project is about in this level of depth that we just don't get in these little Instagram videos. So we have Jeremy, a Lunartick bar. Do I call you Jeremy or Lunartick? What do you prefer?
Oh man, you call me Jeremy right now.
We'll call it Jeremy, but the artistic persona is Lunartick. He's coming out with a new album. It's 3 weeks. We'll give you the details to follow. It's called Lightships, and I'm gonna tell you, I've had the opportunity to listen to it its entirety, probably 10 times. At the first listen, I'm not gonna lie, at the first listen, I just couldn't believe that this was an independent artist who is coming out with this album. And I'll be honest, and I don't like to compare any. I hate when people want to always compare somebody, right? But at first, and when the first song, Pharaohs, and we'll talk about that more. But the first song, I was like, wait, is this Thievery Corporation? Which you may or might name it. I've been a Thievery Corporation fan for decades.
I've fucked with Thievery Corporation since I was a wee child. I fucking love those guys.
And so as I dug in deeper and deeper, I was like, it's not Thievery, but it's my jam. This is what I listen to. I'm a down-tempo, lo-fi, 600 songs in a playlist, because that is my vibe, whether it's instrumental, whether it's vocal. And before we even get into that, we just met through Deontay, and when I was familiar with Oddly Enough Productions, and when I saw your website, there was something that really struck me, and I put it down here. It said, well, first of all, I want to thank you for trusting me to dissect your work in preparation for the interview.
Oh man, I'm it's my pleasure, man. I'm so excited for this. Yeah.
So, I'm coming from the premise of the interpretation of music fuels my curiosity, in being able to talk to the creator of a project, of a piece of art, any type of art, whether it's visual art, whether it's audio. It's just, to me, that's like the stuff of great satisfaction to me. Other people, everyone has their thing. It was like, oh my God, I get to talk about that. So Oddly Enough Productions states that you do pro audio work with character. And immediately I was like, I can ask you now that you're in person, what does character mean to you, and how does it play a part in your work?
Character for me is just the center of why you do things, right? And because character means a lot of things to different people, but for me, Simon Sinek, this speaker, he said, I know who he is. Yeah, I know you know. Yeah. The golden circle, right? The what, how, and why, right? Yeah. And the center of the golden circle is why, right? And successful people, successful companies, successful brands, they're successful because they start with the why they do things, and then they work out from the center of the circle outward, right? So when I heard that for the first time, it completely changed my perspective when it came to building my own personal brand, and really it inspired me to really do what I do now professionally, which is work with audio. So when I came up with that, that saying, because I don't want to say that other companies' work is lesser, right? But I am confident in saying that all of the work I do has an imprint of me on it. And I'm confident in that because I've been told that hundreds of thousands of times by people I've been working with. So pro audio solutions with character is just...
And precision.
Yeah, exactly, right? And precision is also a huge part of it. Yeah. And I think the precision and efficiency are pretty... And precision, efficiency, and passion are kind of like the three big things for me. And I think that's why I've been able to be as fortunate as I am when it comes to working with audio professionally. So thank you for pointing that out, man. Actually, I put a lot of thought into that little blurb on my website. I'm glad that it stuck out to you.
Well, I was thorough, and obviously there's more to it, but that really stood out for me because I haven't heard that before, and I hear what you're saying. It's not about evaluating what other people are doing or not doing, right? It's about what can I do, So then I have another question for you that always comes up for me, and I've worked it out over time. There was a time when I thought that structure and procedures squelch creativity, but then I have learned that actually incubates creativity. But I have learned, and I want to ask you what your process is, and as it relates to balancing those two things. Is I get the technical stuff out of the way, kind of the procedural stuff. I get it laid out, the structure and all that, and then it opens up the creativity and the flow. Now you could start in this you could start with the creativity and flow, and then try to squeeze it into a structure. But I've tried both ways, and I found that it's nice to have somewhere for it to land, because if you want it to go anywhere, it's got to be able to fit through the tunnel.
Yeah, you got to give it legs.
You've got to give it legs. So tell me your kind of, not your process, but tell me how you balance those two things, because sound work is very technical. It's very technical. There's numbers involved.
Yep.
There's it's not the same as here's what I've done, somebody else fix it. You're the fixer.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I think it's pretty. To answer your question about how I balance the two, because for years, I've been writing music and producing music since 2005, right? And when I was in high school, and I started out, obviously, like a lot of people, with very little technical knowledge. I had a little bit because my dad had a studio that I grew up around. So I was around music and analog gear and recording equipment. So I was very much into that stuff. But I had very little technical knowledge and experience at the time, obviously. So I spent years, just, honing my craft and trying to get better at what I did. And, looking back at it, obviously, I wouldn't change what I did, but I know now, knowing what I know now about how technical efficiency is really important with audio. I would have maybe implemented my present process a little bit earlier, right? So I figured out very quickly that by just setting myself up for success in the creative process, I make it easier for me later on in the technical side of things, right? Because for me, I operate in two different modes, right? I operate in the creative mode and then the audio engineer mode, right? And for this album and for all of my albums, I've produced, mixed, and mastered them, right? So a lot of people will tell you in the professional audio industry that it is like a cardinal sin to master your own album, which I do think has some validity to it. Obviously, not everybody has the cash to get your album mastered professionally, right? So for me, I went to school for audio production at Full Sail.
Yeah, but let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
Because I know that this happens with people, right?
Yeah.
Is they lay down tracks and they do some things, but they don't know how to take it. Even with even with video production, right? Is like, I've been there. I was like, I can't pay somebody to do the color correction. I can't pay someone to do the sound mixing. So I'm gonna do the best that I can, knowing that it could be deficient. So I feel you on that totally. So being able to do all those pieces, although it is really, that's a lot to have, right? At once. But would you foresee yourself being able to relinquish some parts of the production process when the means become available?
100%. Yeah. Okay. I would love to be able to have somebody else master my stuff. it would take a lot of trust, right? I
That,
would have
that
to
would be
really,
the piece you would give up.
the thing for me is like, you know, the main reason why a lot of professional audio audio professionals will say it's a bad idea to master your own music is because it's very hard for people to switch from one side of the brain to the other.
Sure.
I've spent a long time trying to perfect that, being able to take off my music producer hat, put on my mixing engineer hat, take that off, put on my mastering engineer hat, because they're three very different parts of the process. So I think if you're going to do everything yourself, it's totally possible, and I endorse it fully. Do it. But you have to understand also that there is a very meticulous and intentional way to do it, and you have to understand that, okay, this is the end of my music production process. Now begins the mixing. Now begins the mastering. As I've, developed my workflow, mixing and music production kind of work side by side in tandem. And I do that by setting up my music production sessions away as templates, right? And like all of us creative professionals understand templates, right? Video production has templates, audio production has templates. Templates are, like a universe send. Like they are the main reason why I'm able to do what I do efficiently. I spend the time building a template for music production, and everything's pre-routed, everything's pre-set up so that, because I understand my creative flow, I'm like, okay, I'm going to want to do this eventually. So like, I'm going to set this up so that it's there so I can like very easily like add things, subtract things, layer things. So I've set myself up for success that way. And then once that process is done and I'm happy with how the song is sounding mix wise and production wise, that's when I take off that hat. I like bounce it out as it is like not changing. That's the final mix. And then move on to the mastering process, which is where you kind of polish everything and make everything more clear. So it's a lot of work, but it's definitely possible. And there are ways to do it.
And I think there are moments of relief along the way.
Oh, 100%.
And luckily, once you get through the process, you're not hovering in that anxiety anymore. Mm-hmm. Like you've moved on from it, so which is a good thing. Kind of like pain, we have pain, we experience it, but it's not like, oh, I'm sitting here remembering pain and moaning. Luckily it kind of. Otherwise, I think women would never have a second child.
Oh, 100%, dude. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I would love to talk. I love talking process, and I love talking creation, but I want to talk about Lightships.
Gonna turn you into a ham before you're 6 months old.
I want to unpack the album as a whole, and immediately when I heard the word Lightships, the title, I guess this is my mind. I think my memory is best served by visual images, but also my understanding and perception of things, even though it could be completely off, starts with an image. And this is the image that I had when I saw Lightships, and I was like, okay, Lightships, like, where are we going? I know we're going somewhere. And then I've looked up Lightships. I looked up the definition of Lightships. And tell me about just the title from that definition. Is it way off?
Well, so what the piece that you have here is actually like very close to what I was envisioning when I was like conceptualizing the album, right? And it's funny, the album actually wasn't called Lightships until like maybe the last 20% of its life cycle, right? Production cycle, I'll say, or creation cycle, right? It was called something else entirely, which it was like a whole different title. And then once the album was done, and as far as like the vibe and most of the tracks were all set and everything, I played it for my partner Britt, and she said, I don't think that title's right anymore. And she's just like, I think you need to change the title of the album. I was like, I think you're right. And it was kind of like one of those lightning strike moments. I was like, I need to change the name of the album. So Lightships came from ultimately the inspiration from the album started when I came across a video of my grandmother who passed in 2019. I hadn't heard her voice.
Was that Judith?
It was Judith.
Okay.
Yeah, you guessed it.
I was right.
Yeah. So my grandma, I was very close with her, and she passed in 2019, which was very difficult for me. And I realized when I came across this family memory video, I think it was a Facebook memory, you know, how they always notify you when a new memory shows up. And it was her. It was a video of her at a birthday party, and I realized I hadn't heard her voice since she passed, and it made me feel a certain type of way. And then it got me thinking of, like, you know, for me, obviously sound and audio and people's voices are a huge part of my life. So I started thinking of that as like a way for somebody to like be remembered is through their voice, and to almost kind of exist in our realm for a little bit longer. So that's kind of what inspired the whole album right at that moment. And she loved lighthouses. She was like, she went out of her way to see as many lighthouses as she could throughout her life. And one of my favorite memories of her is I was in a shopping mall and I found this. Her favorite color was also purple. And I found this amazing glass sculpture of a lighthouse that was purple.
No.
And I was like, I have to get this for my grandma. And so I don't even remember how much it cost. It was absurdly priced, but it was a beautiful piece of art. So I was just like, I have to do it. And I gave it to her for Christmas that year. And she just like burst into tears and was like, this is the most like beautiful gift. And that was a great moment for me, and I was very happy, and it meant a lot to me to share that with her.
Absolutely.
So I didn't want to call the album Lighthouses because I felt like that was a little bit on the nose. And then I realized Lightships was another word for lighthouses. And light, you know, lightships and lighthouses are also metaphorical for like guiding lights through the spirit realm. So
well, here's the thing too about lightships is it's a surrogate for a lighthouse when there isn't a lighthouse, right?
Yep.
The ship has the light on it and it's serving that purpose.
Yep.
And then I thought about that, and then I thought about how so many of us, maybe unbeknownst to us ourselves, serve that purpose in life.
Yep.
As we are the surrogate for something that someone wasn't getting.
Yep.
Right? And then it means your purpose, if you're a light ship, your purpose is to guide other people. And so other people would say that, well, that's not good because what about some purpose for you? And it's if your only purpose is to benefit others. But I was like, what comes of that purpose? What comes when you're executing that purpose is purpose within itself,
yeah,
you know?
100%.
And I mean, because you brought it up with your grandmother, I was close to my grandmother. I was 13 when she died. That was the first person that I experienced death from. But then my mother died when I was 21, and I had some cassette tapes. My mother would record. There was this like night. Are you ready? 1975, the cassette tape.
Oh, wow, nice.
And I did not listen to the cassette tape until probably a couple years ago. I think it was goddamn COVID, right? Because COVID just makes you just dig into stuff.
Look
that you
inward.
Like, okay, so I'm here. What now? What? I'm like got these cassette tapes.
Yep.
And when I started listening, I heard my mother's voice, and it's a whole complicated relationship, right? So it's not so much about like, it's like losing someone as so much as it about almost like the experience of hearing that brings back really bad memories, right? So it's not always good, but it's something that I had avoided to hear her own voice. And I was like, oh, there's her voice. But I don't know if you've had the opportunity, and again, this is 1975. I was 5 years old. And I heard my own voice as a child reading or telling a story. And I was like, wow, there was so many aspects of my voice, even though it's deeper, that really retained my syncopation and rhythm.
Yeah. You're the way
unmistakably me. having come from never being videotaped, right? I mean, people's whole lives are filmed, and someone will be able to go back and see their own birth on videotape.
Yep.
That is incredible to me. I've got a cassette tape from 1975. So let us move to this. Let's move to the next segment, because I could talk for a very long time, but I want to unpack the album in various stages. One is the entirety of it, and then kind of looking at the structure of it. And then we'll go into, specific songs and tracks and some lyrics. But what really comes to mind immediately is what the inspiration for the creation of the album was.
Yeah. That it was my hearing my grandma's voice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that honestly it was what kind of started everything. It was the impetus. And then it's interesting because that was the impetus, and then I came up with this whole concept from it. Of, I went in depth with it. Like I was like, okay, there's the protagonist who's like trying to communicate with the spirit world, and all this stuff, right? And it what was great about that narrative is it didn't make it to the final result of the album, but it really helped me shape a lot of the songs. Yeah. Because ultimately the album is just a way. It's kind of like a way for me to reconnect with my grandma. Excuse me. And also, hopefully, people through listening to the album can find ways to reconnect with somebody they've lost, maybe. Or maybe somebody they've not necessarily lost from this realm of existence, but maybe somebody they've just grew farther away from, less connected to. Because that was ultimately inspiration. Is just I wanted to reconnect with my grandma, and specifically because since she passed, obviously I have a son now, and I know that she would absolutely love him, and so there are a few songs which we'll get into that actually feature him and his voice, and also there's a lot of my grandmother. And my grandfather interpolated throughout a few of the songs. So that was ultimately the inspiration, is like hearing her voice for the first time since she passed and wanting to reconnect with her. Because I came up with this whole convoluted narrative that was great. But then ultimately, one of my best friends just kind of called me on it and was like, I mean, the narrative's dope, but like, it feels like you're just trying to connect with your grandma again. And he knew my grandma when she was alive. Right. I was like, you know what? You're right, dude. So that's the moment where I was just like, all right, narrative was good. It served its purpose. Now it's just, I'm just going to take it for what it is. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's successful in reconnecting with her. I think it's incredibly successful. Me not even knowing the backstory, knew there was some there. I knew there was some connectivity. I knew there was some. There was a mention, and we'll probably get to it again, but it's okay to repeat stuff though about wishing that she could, see your son. Yep. And man, that is of course, who wouldn't say that? Or of course, who would not want that, right? Yep. But in the same sense, is you are allowing her to see your son in this way in which music is a form of symbolic immortality. Yep. You've resurrected her being, and you've placed it in, and it's interwoven into this, and just you're creating a legacy by just putting all that in there. And it's so good that you're able to share that, because a lot of people it would just go over their head, and that's fine. Some people will eat a delicious meal and say, oh, that was good, and someone would just, every bite would just be like, they can dissect it.
They taste the layers,
decode it, and where it came from, and what was grown, and how it was grown, and oh man, just the imagination. We all have it. I think some of it slips through people's fingers. But sonically, then let's talk about sonically. What was your goal for the album sonically? I love that word sonically. Everyone knows sonic. In case you didn't know, it refers to the way a sound moves and vibrates.
Yeah, man. So the big thing for me sonically was like I wanted to establish a sort of like kind of like balancing nostalgia with uneasiness and maybe some mystery sprinkled in. Like because like I really love albums that can like take you to places sonically and with very little effort, right? Because there are a few albums like, you know, the first one that comes to mind is Field Guide to the Spirit World by Aesop Rock. Like they did such a great job like telling a story throughout the album with very little effort. So I love when albums do that. So sonically, I wanted to approach it as like, okay, what are my influences? And how can I, you know, tap into those influences? Because my influences are all over the place, right? I've listened to so much music over the years. I have so many influences. I'm like, how do I balance my influences with the goal of the album, the concept of the album, and like, you know, how do I achieve these things? So I wanted to, balance nostalgia, mystery, and some uneasiness, some, you know, some determination, some passion sprinkled in there. And I was actually talking to a buddy of mine, you know, about how I wanted to make sure that there were like, you know, movements in the album. Like this is the more spiritual side of the album. This is the slightly more optimistic side of the album. Here's the pessimistic side of the album. Here's the darker side of the album, and here's the bright light at the end of the tunnel part of the album, right? And he's like, man, how do you do that though? You know, do you go from major keys to minor keys? And you know, I write music almost exclusively in minor keys because that's just my style. But I think you can make a song from a sound design perspective. You can make a song sound like it's happier, and then another song sound like it's dark or brooding. Just from a sound design perspective, you could have you can have identical chords, identical melodies. Yeah. But from the soundscape approach,
but let me give you this too, because you know I'm coming from the listener standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. The listener standpoint who doesn't. You know, I mean, I create some music for my videos, but not at that level at all because I've got my hands in too many other things. I'm not focused. I don't know. I'm not able to do that, right? Mm-hmm. But I think I will say that I'm able to surrender to a piece of music, a body of music, and if I can listen to it end to end, all the better. And there's, you know, I could probably count on one hand how many albums I can listen to beginning to end. Usually I'm like, I hate that song, I skip it over and over again. Yeah. Even though I know maybe there's an intentionality, there's clearly an intentionality here. And again, going back to the graphic, is when I listen to this, I'm on that ship.
Yeah.
I'm on that fucking ship, and that ship is taking me to these different dimensions and these different places. And every time I'm at a new place, I'm experiencing reality in a different way. That really came through for me, because me being a multidimensional person where I can, you know, have joy in a moment, but then I can have sorrow in a moment, and I experience each one of those fully. I'm not someone who's chasing happiness and always want to be happy. No, I'm like whatever. And that's something I've learned. It's not something I'm just like everybody else. I want to be happy, No, now it's like, I have to surrender to whatever is happening. And, you know, there were some moments when I was listening to it where it started to take me to a place, and I was like, wait, why are you going to take me there? Why are you going to take me to grieving?
Yeah.
We were just grooving.
Yeah.
And now we're grieving. And I was like, wait, and I surrendered to it. I was like, wait a second, am I wanting this ride?
Yeah.
Or is someone taking me on the ride, right? And so I was like, I gotta listen to it again because maybe I want it to happen. Placebo effect, right?
Yep.
But I was like, no, it's taking me on a ride. Like, I am on that lightship. I'm really traveling on that lightship. So, like, seriously, well done.
Thank you.
Like, I always like to ask people a question on their albums about what their favorite song is. And I hate saying, what's your favorite song? You know, I hate favorite anything, because like, what's your favorite movie? I have like 100. Like, I've watched thousands, right? How can you? So this is how I'm going to rephrase that. Is there any song that when you're in your car, you're going to put on and you've listened to it more than any other song, like after it's done?
Oh man.
Just
Since the album has been done and mastered, I want to say the song that I have spun the most. It's a tough call between a few of them, but I gotta say it's probably gonna be "We Sang You Home" is probably in the number one spot, and it's probably it's "We Sang You Home" or "A Groovy Broadcast," the second track.
Okay.
It's between those two, because I've just those songs have just resonated with my moods recently the most, and that's how I approach listening to music, is I just let my moods kind of dictate what I listen to at the time. And a few months back, I was spinning The Resonance and a Silo Eidolon a lot before either of those songs had vocals on them. I was listening to those songs a lot because I was in a slightly darker / weirder place, mentally.
Right.
But yeah, recently "We Sang You Home" and "A Groovy Broadcast" are probably like fighting for the number one and number two spot. Yeah.
I love that because I'm the same way. I'm very intentional what I choose to listen to.
Yep.
And I will get in to a point where like I will listen to a song on repeat. But then if something changes, I don't even want to listen to that song for a long time, and sometimes for a very long time. For some reason, I've moved past it. So I love that question, and I love talking about this album. I love listening to the album. I definitely want to include some snippets in the final video, but I want to move on to I want to offer a couple quotes that I've made about the album. And then we're gonna move on to unpacking the lyrics, because there are 16 tracks, 13 of which are instrumental tracks, and 3 that have vocals, and those 3 are really found towards the end, towards the second half, because I was like, what's the intentionality of the tracks? I love that the vocal tracks are all the way together. It's almost like people coming over and hanging out for a party, and then everybody leaves, and then you're back by yourself again. That's kind of how it felt for me, and that's kind of how I live my life, as I like to spend time alone, and I love to have those moments where I'm social. But it just, so it really, that's why I was like, okay, the album spoke to me on so many more levels than just the sound, but also the personality, and the ability for me to focus on other things while I'm listening as well. But here's the couple of quotes that I made, because I'm just that kind of guy where I'm just gonna make a quote about something, because I think in my mind, in my imagination, I was like a movie reviewer or something back in the day, and but it's like, oh, I didn't even know that was an option. It's too late now. So this is my option to offer this. But my first quote, which I shared with Jeremy, was multi-dimensionally complex, yet fundamentally and cosmically primal, offers the opportunity to explore the depth to which one should wish to be swallowed up in. And I think that falls in line with Surrender. And then last night I listened to the album, that was probably my 10th time listening to the album. There's a time when you listen and you kind of subconsciously listen while you're doing things.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's a time when you're actively listening. And I'd been really subconsciously listening after moving from active to subconscious. And then I moved back to active last night in preparation, because I was like, okay, there's so much here. Let me reel it in. I got to reel it in, or we'll be talking for 10 hours. So I said, you, and I quote, you really came through in the music. The connection was so apparent that I felt like I knew a lot about you before I even met you. And I think that people look at facts about people and the accumulation of experiences, and I look for the manifestations of everything that the person has come to be at that point in time, because we're constantly evolving. So I wanted to offer that to you, because I don't think that artists even get that kind of feedback. I think people thumbs up and likes and stuff. It's like, no, let me tell you
what's
happening here. And that's why I'm so excited to be able to talk to you about this and continue to talk to you about this.
Thank you, man. Yeah, honestly, those quotes are humbling and just they put me over the moon, man. I really appreciate honestly just the bit where you said you feel like you know me before you met me. I think that's kind of really what I hope to achieve by writing music and just in general. I want music specifically under Lunartick, in that capacity. I want, because Lunartick's a piece of me and a large piece of me, and I want to share that piece with as many people as I can. So that really means a lot.